Okay, let's look at the sine and cosine waves and the unit circle. So the natural period of sine and cosine is 2 pi. So I'm going to show you why this is relevant and how we can use this knowledge in some basic trigonometric equations. So the sine and cosine functions are periodic with a fundamental repeating interval of 2 pi. So this means the sine and cosine of x repeat their values every 2 pi units. So the 2 pi arises because the sine and cosine functions are defined as projections of a point rotating around a unit circle, and a full rotation of the circle corresponds to 2 pi radians. So if you're not familiar with the concept of radians at the moment, don't worry too much, but for instance, let's start with, so for the cosine wave, like we said, it's defined as a projection of a point rotating around the unit circle. So if we start at x equals 1, which is right here, we keep going, becomes smaller and smaller. That's as it approaches 0. Keeping in mind that the first value here is always x, followed by the value for y. So as we're approaching x equals 0, our cosine value gets smaller and smaller. Likewise, our sine value gets larger. So if you keep the unit circle in your mind's eye, as we're approaching, so the blue one here is the cosine, as we're approaching 1/2 pi, our value for the cosine wave gets smaller and smaller, approaches 0. The value for the cosine wave gets smaller and smaller until we get to 0. Keeping the unit circle in your mind's eye, so as we're approaching 0, we're going past 0 into the negative values. Remember, the cosine corresponds to the x-axis, so once we move past 0, we're moving to the left, so which corresponds over here, moving downwards as we keep going, going. As we are approaching pi, which is equal to 180 degrees, our value for the cosine wave gets closer and closer to -1. So if we look back degrees for 1 pi, we're getting closer to -1 on the x-axis. So likewise, if we consider the sine wave, the sine function, as we're arcing closer and closer to 180 degrees, we're approaching 0, this sine function, and as we go past pi, or past 180 degrees, we're dipping into now the negative values for the sine function. Coincidentally, negative values, we're still in negative values for the cosine function. However, as we keep going counterclockwise, our cosine function will start to become less negative. So as we keep going counterclockwise towards 3 pi over 2, or 270 degrees as we approach x equals 0. And remember that this corresponds to an x value. So if we're here, the x-axis, we start to approach a full cycle and x equals 1 again, and then y approaches 0 again. And likewise, as we approach 2 pi, or a full cycle, or 360 degrees, our sine function